Oh, absolutely not, because imagine if we don't spend government money and we give it back to people, then if they spend it all, then you're even. But they're probably going to save a lot of it, in which case you're reducing inflation. Okay, so and also, when the government spends a lot, that's what creates inflation. We learned that from Joe Biden. And so if we reduce government spending, then that's, reduces inflation. And if you give people money, then they're going to save a bunch of it. And when they save it, then that also reduces demand and reduces inflation.
Okay, so you're not worried about it. And
no,
Mr. Wolt, to follow up on Peter's question, you wrote in an op-ed in the fall of 2023 that, quote, Putin is to blame, certainly like Al-Qaeda was to blame for 9/11. Do you still feel that way now, or do you share the president's assessment as he says Ukraine is to blame for the start of this war?
Well, it shouldn't surprise you that I share the president's assessment on all kinds of issues. What I wrote as a member of Congress was as a former member of Congress. Look, what I share the president's assessment on is that the war has to end. And what comes with that? What comes with that should be, at some point, elections. What comes with that should be peace. What comes with that is prosperity that we've just offered in this natural resources and economic partnership arrangement, an end to the killing, and European security and security for the world. The president's not only determined to do that in Europe, he's determined to do it in the Middle East. And just a few months ago, we had an administration that had tried for 15 months. Week after week, sitting with you here and couldn't get us to a ceasefire, couldn't get our hostages out. Now we're at that point. We're back to maximum pressure on Iran, and we have just begun, and we will drive towards a ceasefire and all of those other steps. I'm not going to pre-negotiate or get ahead of the sequencing of all of that. It's a very delicate situation, but this is a president of peace, and who here would argue against peace?
Okay, so you do share that assessment. And can I follow up? In 2017, then President Trump.
Go ahead.
Can I just follow up really quick?
You just had two questions, Kate.
Jordan,
go ahead.
I have an important follow-up.
Jordan, go ahead.
So, Mr. Hassett, you were speaking about tariff revenue, and you also addressed a question about the IRS. President Trump has spoken about replacing income tax with tariff revenue, especially with all this waste, fraud, and abuse that we're seeing cut. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. And in fact, if you think about the China tariff revenue that we're estimating is coming in from the 10% that we just added, plus the de minimis thing, that it's between $500 billion and $1 trillion over 10 years is our estimate. And that's something that is outside of the reductions that markets are seeing through the negotiations up on the Hill. And so we expect that the tariff revenue is actually going to make it much easier for Republicans to pass a bill, and that was the president's plan all along.
And then I have a question for Stephen Miller about DOGE. So you spoke about DOGE. You said roughly $50 billion is set to be cut in a year of waste, fraud, and abuse by unelected bureaucrats. We're hearing this ironic narrative from the president's critics and the left-wing media that Elon Musk is an unelected bureaucrat and he's doing all this terrible stuff. Isn't one of DOGE's objectives to get rid of the federal bureaucracy, the deep state? And also, who was running the White House when Joe Biden was in office? Because I don't know a single person who believes it was Joe Biden.
You're tempting me to say some very harsh things about some of our media friends. Yes, it is true that many of the people in this room for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, just one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform on our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers at the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm looking at the clock. We've almost had an hour of time. I know a couple of these individuals have a meeting to get to at 2 p.m. So you're welcome to follow up with my team for further questions. We're going to let these guys get back to running the United States government. And we will see you all later. President Trump will be speaking at 3 o'clock at the Black History Month reception. So thank you. It's good to see you. We'll see you in a bit. Thanks.
All right, so the White House briefing wrapping up there.